Phil Bennett, Mondays in our 5 o'clock hour. Always great to see our coach, Phil Bennett, with us on 365 Sports in that beautiful, amazing backyard. The weather hasn't gotten on you today at all?
Well, if you notice, I'm undercover here.
Yeah, you are.
I'm in my outdoor kitchen instead of off my patio, so I had to cover up.
Yeah, you've already told us about that outdoor kitchen, and that's a flex move too, by the way. I'll just get in my outdoor kitchen and cover up, and then of course cook. All right, so you were impressed with what Baylor did with Spavital in the run game. Did it remind you of anything you guys used to do back when you'd spread everybody out and then you'd hammer their gut?
Absolutely. You count the numbers, you look at the angles. Early in the game, I went to the game with a big Baylor booster, Jim Wolf, that is the CEO of Adams Corporation. And we were sitting at the Baylor in the press area or the Baylor club. And I told him, I said, if Avalo stays in this front, I said, it's really going to be interesting to see if Jake will keep running the ball. Because a lot of times you get some offensive coordinators, they'll get out of it if even if it's working. And I thought that decided the game. I told him in the text, I said, I was proud of you. I said, you saw your numbers were good, your back was hot, and without question, it won the game for him.
Phil, that was a huge moment for that team, for the fans, to have all the guys back and everything. What was it like for you to kind of witness it? Because it's been a rough 2 years for the fans here, and to kind of have everybody back was to experience that moment was really cool.
Paul, the first thing, the whole day was great. And you know, I want to say this, those players that were on the 13 and 14 team, there is a love for Baylor that is, it's a lifetime love. And their commitment to Baylor and seeing them after the game and during the game, I mean, they were into the game, and you knew that they wanted to win. But I thought it was good for everybody. Of course, the atmosphere was good. I thought that, you know, I think I told you last week, I had a feeling this could be a really good matchup. The only thing that concerned me, and we had a couple of breaks, was I thought Kendall did a great job of vertically stretching the field. TCU, we got lucky a couple of times. They dropped a couple of wide open passes in the vertical game, but that happens in big games. But yeah, it was an exciting atmosphere.
Was there anybody you hadn't seen in a while that was kind of extra? I mean, I imagine there's probably a number of guys that you hadn't seen in a while. Can you just like give us some insight on maybe a moment or two here that just really stood out to you?
You know, yeah, guys like Bo Blackshear, Bo was a stud for us.
Oh yeah.
I hadn't seen him in a long time, and just Trevor Valdez. I mean, guys that our scout team quarterback. I mean, some of our. It was just every time you turned around, it was man. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to see you. And it was genuine. Yeah. As Art said this when he left, he said, Bennett, that was good for our soul, wasn't it? And I said, yes, it was. That's awesome. And, you know, you find out you have such we have lifelong relationships with these kids. You know, I have that with my coaches. Most of them have died, but, you know, R.C. Slocum was my position coach. And we talk weekly. I mean, and we have become lifelong friends, and it was just really nice. And, you know, once again, hats off to Sammy Citrano for what he did.
Yeah, Art sent a text to me that said it was mixed emotions, but something that was so good to do. It kind of summarized what you said. Yeah. Phil, you know, every player that I've talked to or texted to about the weekend said they were thrilled with how it all went down. And there was an audio or technical issue with a highlight video that was very impressive, and that did not play right away, so it looked a little bit awkward when they walked on the field. But all I've heard was great stuff from everybody that seemed to be there.
I think Baylor did a great job, Smoke. You know, and and of course with Sammy. And it wasn't about Art or myself or Philip Montgomery. It was for those players. And as I say again, they were they love Baylor. I'm going to try to get a hold of David Wetzel, who a lot of the players they said was outstanding, and and Mac and everybody. So and to win the game and to play in that fashion. It was from a start to finish. You knew it was a game, just like we thought it would. And for them to show, as I told Jake, that they showed a lot of character. Yeah, I told Jim Wolf, who was with me, when they scored, I think it was 1:20. I said they might have left too much time on the clock for Baylor to get down there. Then I said to him out loud, I said, I wonder if they'll stick with their running game or their flat passing game. And, of course, he had a couple of runs in there. I think the first play was a run. And then the fourth down play with Sawyer was just, it was money.
Was that like a big pair by Aranda? 4th and 9 near midfield. If you fail, then TCU's a couple of out patterns away from beating you at the buzzer themselves?
I immediately thought of the game 2 years ago.
Yep.
I thought to myself, I said, but at the same time, discussing it, my wife said there, why is he doing that? I said, because he wants these kids to know he has confidence in them and he wants to win. And to me, they took the message without a doubt. They never even thought about coming off. I think the offensive line and the run, I think those guys knew, what, we can handle this. And if you remember, I'm telling you something that brought back great memories. The next play, they ran that zone again with Washington. It reminded me of Shock that in the 14 game, the whole line took him almost to the damn goal line.
He said, Coach, that he almost had to tell him put me down. Time's going to run out.
Yeah,
because there's
exactly. I said this might have been too good a play.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a video that a former Baylor alum sent to us. It is eerie how similar the two runs you're talking about with Bryson and then with Shock, and the field goals and the time and everything else, the way it went down.
Only difference between the field goals was the foot of the kicker.
Yeah, lefty and righty. Yeah.
Right.
Same spot.
I do have to ask you, though, Phil, I don't know if you saw this, but Chris Callahan ran out for a promotion to help a girl kick a field goal. It's a good thing that he
missed it.
Oh, he shanked it bad.
Hey, I did not see it, but some of the players did. Of course, every kicker there, Jonesy and before him, Aaron, they was that, Coach, you were always my motivator, because I knew if I came off and shanked a kickoff or missed an extra point or field goal, you were right there to get into my ass. And I started laughing. I started laughing. I said, well, you're about the fifth person that told me that. I said, I must have done something right, because I had a group of them that wanted to see me.
Yeah, no, they did. I bet that was emotional. Craig?
Coach, does it seem like Sawyer Robertson has a bit of an it factor to him?
I think that watching them play, that he does what really good quarterbacks do. He makes everybody around him better, including their defense. I thought defensively I think TCU had 3.2 yards a rush. Now the vertical passing game, they've got to shore that up a little bit. But yes, I think he makes everybody better. And I'm not saying this, but one of the things that I looked at is just his body language. I mean, he's not I can tell he's not a big talker, but his body language, especially on that 4th and 9, he was ready to go. Nick Florence came by to see me at halftime, and Nick told me that he had, I think he might have worked for him during the summer. And he told me, he said, Coach, you would really like him. He said, he's got it.
Well, anyone recruited by Mike Leach has probably got it, right?
Yes.
So Texas Tech goes into Ames after back-to-back losses and a rough week as far as trying, okay, what's happened to us? What about their win on the road against Iowa State?
We all know how hard it is to play up there. Of course, I coached there for 4 years. And Barry Switzer used to say this. He said, this is the most, he said, this area, every time I come to Ames, it's like the Twilight Zone. He said, we pull up, everybody's in the parking lot. They're doing those Iowa chops. He said, you're hungry the whole pregame because you could smell it. Nobody's in the stadium. You come back out for opening kickoff, and they're off the rafters. And it's eerie, and it is. I think it was a great win for Joey and his staff. I talked to Taylor Young. Of course, Taylor was calling me after it was over. Who all did you see? He was more interested on who all was. Of course, he was happy, but he said, Coach, who all was there? But they were happy, and he and Brian Nance both wish they could have been there. But he said, Coach, our guys really showed a lot of character, and especially after the way they lost to TCU. That was a huge win.
Phil Bennett with us on 365 Sports every Monday at about 5 o'clock.
Phil, what happened to the Aggies this last week? They fell right into a trap game.
They sure did. And, I think all of us understood that South Carolina was good. You've heard a lot of talking about missed tackles. And I'm going to tell you, I did this for a long time. I've had games. I can go back to the 2014 or 15 Fiesta Bowl. Tackling is a mindset and it's a focus. And you can be in position and not make tackles and lose games. And I think that's what happened to the Aggies. I like what Mike Elko said. He didn't sugarcoat it. He said we didn't tackle. When you miss tackles, usually, almost always, you're out of control. And it's not an effort and it's not a toughness thing. But to be a good tackler, you've got to be focused. You've got to be under control. You've got to overemphasize the wrap, move your feet, your leverage, and they just didn't do that. And I think it put them in a tailspin that they couldn't get out of. And that's a tribute to South Carolina. I do believe this. I believe they're a better team than what they showed. I don't think the issue was at quarterback. I'm a little bit concerned they lost their number one running back that really could have helped them. They didn't rush for the yards that they normally do. And South Carolina rushed for almost 300 yards, which, you could look at the Baylor TCU game. You can tell why Baylor run. They almost ran for, 300 yards themselves.
What do you think of the job Willie Fritz is doing down at Houston? I mean, that was kind of all burned down to ashes almost when he arrived, and they are picking up a little win every couple of weeks. They got 3 Big 12 wins now. I don't think anybody saw that coming, but what do you make of the job that he did? And obviously a disappointing loss for Chris Kleiman in Kansas State.
I happen to see, I have a lot of people text me about Kansas State, and one of them is a knowledgeable, really good guy, and he told me, he said that team outplayed us in the second half, just like Baylor did TCU. He said the last drive was not surprising to me because of what they had done previously. And I think Willie is a guy that he lets his coaches coach. I think he has a really good staff. I think right now what they've done is a little bit like the Bears. They found out who their playmakers are on both sides of the ball. Their quarterback is playing better. He had a great run for the winning touchdown. They're operating better. Their coordinators feel better about what they're calling because they know the players better. And I think you're seeing that. And I think that, Baylor is one of those teams. There's a lot of parity, but with Baylor having Houston and West Virginia and Kansas, those are all 3 teams that are dangerous teams. And I think it's going to be a lot of good football the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, and the college football playoff standings come out tomorrow. That's the first week, and there's, of course, you've been in part of that in 14 and probably would have been a part of it much more in 15 and 16 had things gone differently. Your thoughts about what you think we will see?
I think that there will be some people, obviously the 4 leading conferences, who I don't know who the BYU, I guess, in the Big 12, you know, I think there's going to be somebody brought up the scenario of A&M. Let's just say A&M. Let's say A&M wins out. They go to Atlanta and they play Georgia and they lose. They're 10-3. You know, do they get in with the 10 wins or do they not get in for the 3 losses? What would be y'all's take on that?
I think being in that league, they get in with the 10 wins simply for the fact that they won 10 games. They also got to the SEC championship game. That's how I feel.
What about you, Paul and Dave?
I would think 10 wins they're getting in if they're. I mean, they're an SEC team. I mean, that's going to knock somebody else out.
One of the things.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What if you have, say you have an 11-2 BYU or 11-2 Iowa State? Do you put a 10-3 SEC team over them?
Here's the issue I have with BYU. They have beaten an SEC team in Arkansas, no matter where they are, and they also have a 38-9 win against Kansas State, and they also beat SMU, who might win the ACC title.
Right.
So they've got some quality wins.
I get what you're saying, though. It's setting up where if you're a Big 12 fan, you don't know if that second team gets in. Yeah.
You know, and let's talk about Boise. Mm-hmm. You know, they're going. I feel like this. A friend of mine and I were talking. He's an AD. He said if Boise wins out, you know, they've lost to Oregon, they're in. Yeah. You know, because they want a non-Power 5 or Power 4 in there.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely think they'd be in there.
You know, there's going to be some questions. You know, where are you? What are you going to do with Clemson now? What if Clemson ends up, say, 11-1, and they don't win the ACC, or they're tied?
Well, you know, Clemson's not going to be and one of anything because they lost this week. But I think Clemson might have put themselves behind it. They have a really weak schedule, and they've lost.
I'm talking about in conference.
In conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, if they win the conference, they're in. But that's the only way I think they're getting in now because their schedule is not very good. They've lost to the 2 best teams they've played. So the only way they get in is to beat Miami or SMU, whoever winds up on the other side of that championship game.
Right.
I know this thing.
I think these people thought that they were going to have an easier job with more than 4 teams. I think they're going to have a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I think just this conversation we're having goes to show just how fun this is going to be, but also how interesting it's going to be just to see how this actually works now, because here we are, and we're going to get those first rankings tomorrow night. But, yeah, there's a lot of questions about how much do you – weigh records in certain leagues versus other leagues. And I think if you're the Big 12, this was kind of a bad weekend with Iowa State and K-State both losing because now you got BYU, and beyond that, who knows if you got a second team in there or not.
Well, and let's be honest, you know, it's being dominated by the SEC and the Big 10.
Yes.
And they're at each other's throat thinking, you know, if you look at the Big 10, you know, you got, of all people, you know, you've got Indiana, you've got Oregon, you got Ohio State.
Yep.
You know, and truthfully, probably all 3 of them are better than anybody in the SEC, in my opinion. I mean, I watched parts of and looked at the replay of the Georgia-Florida game, and I'm telling you, Florida was close to this being a very winnable game for them. If they don't lose their quarterback, I'm not so sure that they don't win that game.
Agreed.
Yeah, Georgia sometimes seems like they're playing with their food. Playing with, like, early on against Alabama, it did cost them because they got such a hole, even though they came back and took the lead.
Smokey, their quarterback has thrown 8 picks the last 3 games. 8.
Yep.
That means that
huge.
They must be playing really good defense. And I say this again, I've coached in the SEC. I've had the number 1 defensive in the SEC. It's a great league, but there's other teams out there capable of beating SEC teams.
Absolutely. The playoff's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds, and it's definitely making for a lot of interesting discussion with still a month to go. I did want to ask you, what are your thoughts on the struggles out at USC for Lincoln Riley? I mean, he had things rolling out there in Norman. We know the big breakup and leaving in the middle of the night with the staff and everything. But has he lost his touch? Is it just a bad pairing? What do you make of that situation?
Two things come to mind. They have missed on some NIL guys, and it's like anything else. If you're missing on recruits, you're struggling. They decided to go with a quarterback that was there from a year ago. And I tell you what else he's missed. I think his staff defensively is not a great staff. And nothing personal, but I just don't feel like either person he's hired, even the young Lynn kid here, is a good young coach, but it's obvious that he might be in over his head with the players that he's using. I think that their players are good, but I don't see any difference makers. What do you guys see?
I think they're a mess. I think he also, it seems like and I don't know if this is why they're not playing well, but he seems to really have rabbit ears, like some coaches do.
Yeah. I would agree with that, David. I think he's sensitive.
Yes.
There's no doubt.
Yes.
I think he's, and I think the one at OU right now is sensitive too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Coach, it's never a good sign when you know, James Franklin the other day.
Yeah.
Look, I know you made some good money in your career, but nobody ever paid you $10 million a year.
No.
When they pay you $10 million a year, that's part of it. Like, you're going to hear some jackasses say some jackass stuff, and you just keep walking through the locker room.
You know, I think you get into this scenario, and I don't like it is what it is now. They feel like if you're making that much money and they're buying that ticket and they're there, they have the right. And you're both right, but at the same time, you have to. I used to always go by the theory that you know, if I'm not asking you for advice, I don't give a damn what you say, or what you think, and anything you say will be construed as an excuse. So the bottom line is we haven't played well. We're working at it, and keep that company line that we're working to get better. Now, one of the things I will tell you, I have a close friend that's on that staff. He says they have not come up with much, that they struggle with NIL money, and said they were on some good kids and couldn't get them, couldn't finish the deal. I think SC has always been a job that's been bigger by the media than by really what they have. It's in a that area, and it's not, everybody's not made for Southern California.
Well, it's not like they've been really. Now, his first year with Caleb, obviously they were very good, right? But you also bring a quarterback with you that in part of transfer portal that's a once in a lifetime type talent.
Right.
He just seems like he helped. Am I right, guys? He had a student newspaper reporter suspended from practice because of something he may have said. A question he asked. That's
you forget he's a guy that I don't think he ever played it down in college football. And we love walk-ons, but he's not a guy that's been in the limelight very much.
No, and he came East Carolina, then to Oklahoma. Yeah, so you get there. Sometimes I think there is the subtle art of not giving an F, Phil, that some coaches need to have, particularly where they are. And I think Saban was particularly good at it. I mean, he would at times get stressed out because he's human, but he also knew that, like, hey, I'm the guy in charge here. Like, I can put all that other stuff out.
People forget, Paul, Nick Saban, I think his first year he lost to ULM.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, he did.
It hasn't always been you just, I told you this before. I tell people this. When you have games, just like A&M, I liked what Mike Elko said. Hey, we've got to own this. We've got 21 days till we play again, another SEC school. We got to live with this. And you know what? That's reality. And, people aren't going to like it. I know that. But we're going to be working. And that's one of the things going back to Baylor that I think that Dave and his staff have done a really nice job of is they said, hey, cut the outside, the verbiage. Everybody's talking. Let's focus on getting better. And look what's happened. They're getting better.
Yeah, Dave even went to the point where he eliminated pretty much any kind of media other than his sessions on Monday, and then he does a show at a local restaurant on Wednesday or Thursday.
Think about this, Smokey. Who needs to listen to that? I mean, hell, there's nobody knows at that time knows they need to do better than the guy that's got the most to lose.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. How's everything else going with you, man? How's family?
Well, we're hoping Jerry is. Just to say this, my brother Jerry has been ill. He's in the hospital, and we just got him in a rehab place that was a wound care specialist. So we're excited about that.
Good.
And just praying and hoping that this takes up and we can get him out of there.
Well, people who don't know this story, that's Jerry who coached Lyndon Kildare. Was he there with Shock?
Yeah, he was Shock's coach.
Jefferson in '86 won a state championship, and I was there on the sideline filming it when I was in TV. He's also the one that gave me the tip that you were going to go work for Art at Baylor.
Did he?
Yep. I never did tell you that, but
that's all right.
He's the one that said, hey, I just happened to call him and just checking in on something. And he said, hey, by the way, I may have something for you. And he told me. And I start blowing up your phone. Well, man, I'm glad you had a great weekend, man. That's good to know. Good.
Very thankful, and thank you guys. It was, I got to finish this last deal. You'll get a kick out of this. I get a text during the game, and it was one of the nicest texts I've ever had, and it was from our boy Andrew Billings.
Wow.
And it was just, I'm telling you what, I kept my composure. My wife looks at me, she goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I just couldn't keep it together. It was a really beautiful text, and it sort of made the night.
Did you guys call him Uncle Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was just that. Of course, I've told y'all the recruiting story. He was such a jewel. His family, Anthony, his mom, they're wonderful people. And I tell you right now, I got a friend up with the Bears. He's kicking ass up there too.
Mm-hmm. Certainly is.
No, yeah, absolutely, he is. Phil, thank you, man. Always.
Thank you.
So
guys.
many topics today. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck. Tell Jerry, please, if you talk to him again anytime soon, that I said hello. He was one of a kind himself. He was just like his brother, Phil.